Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Future of Wellness. I'm Matt Carmichael, editor of What the Future, and your host today. This is our fifth issue covering topics of health, wellness, aging, fitness, nutrition, and more, starting with one of our first print issues of WTF back in 2018. We're going to kick off with some data and overview, run through what's shifting, courtesy of my colleague in Ipsos Strategy 3, Mercedes Bender, and then dive into what we learned by talking to our panel of experts. We'll close, as always, with some tensions. But let's start with a key question. What is the most important factor for your personal health? That was a topic we discussed in that 2018 health issue with Dr. Sandro Gallia, now the Dean of the School of Public Health at Washington University. Then, and now, the people we surveyed ranked their diet and genes as most important, and public policy the least by far. Gallia saw positives in that. If we think our health is in our personal nexus of control, we'll do what we can to control it. That gives people helpful agency. But people's lack of understanding of how much policy and social status matter is problematic. We need to, quote, govern for health, Gallia told WTF. Quote, we need to make sure that we make decisions that actually promote health. We need to make sure multiple sectors act in a way that generates health. That means to make sure that when decisions are made about transportation or housing or income structure or employment, we recognize that these have impacts on health, he said. Since then, well, much has changed. There was a global pandemic in the middle, for starters. On the policy end, we know that for the foreseeable future, public health will not look like it has. The Trump administration has a very different vision of public health than previous administrations did. Research at the National Institutes of Health has both been cut and redirected in ways that will fundamentally reshape care in the present and the future. What we don't know entirely is how the new direction will spin out. There are many plausible outcomes to plan for in the near and the longer term. On the individual side, the rise of wellness influencers is fascinating to watch. There's a proliferation of products with obvious or dubious benefits, from fitness plans to diets to psychedelics to meditation to medication. Prevention magazine felt the need to publish a, quote, trends not to follow list. Many trends are contradictory. Should people go vegan or eat like carnivores? It's no wonder that 66% say there is too much conflicting information online, and they don't know what to trust. One intersection of personal and political health can be seen in the marketing of many wellness-related products. Several years ago, Quartz magazine looked at the marketing of a slew of purported wellness ingredients, being positioned to two very different audiences by two radically different sources: Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop and Alex Jones's InfoWars. For instance, Goop uses Bacopa, an herb said to reduce stress, improve memory, and treat epilepsy, in a supplement called Why Am I So Effing Tired? InfoWars rebrands this in its Brain Force Plus. Very different things. Another intersection of policy and personal realms manifests in shared beliefs. People tend to think they are healthy, though fewer now than in 2018. Most think they get 7 hours of sleep a night. In a survey for Axios, nearly 9 in 10 people say the government should do more to make sure food is safe. This includes updating nutritional guidelines, adding labels to foods with artificial dyes, or reducing exposure to pesticides. A similar number, 90%, say it should be easier for the average American to understand food safety guidelines. Most agree that foods that contain pesticides or artificial food dyes aren't safe to eat, even if they are approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. A plurality of Americans, 38%, say the U.S. government should remove all artificial dyes from foods, even if it makes food cost more to use natural dyes. The problem is there's a say-do gap. We say we want to live healthy lives, and many do, yet there are still epidemics of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and related issues. Trust is kind of what keeps the public health working. Dr. Sharif Elnahal, who formerly served as Undersecretary for Health at the Department of Veterans Affairs, told What the Future that trust is one of his key concerns when it comes to public health. He's worried that if we don't trust the people and institutions giving us recommendations, then we're left fending for ourselves in this complicated and confusing space. So it's not great news that compared to 2018, fewer of us trust our doctors with our health data, 74% versus 83%, and fewer trust artificial intelligence with our medical data, 27% versus 39%. 2 in 3 say they do their own research on health and nutrition topics, but 66% also think there is too much health information online and they don't know what to trust. In our 2020 Truth issue of What the Future, leading trust expert Rachel Botsman said that transparency is often the antithesis of trust. But one place we'd like more transparency, in a way that would likely build trust, is in pricing. A large majority of Americans wish their doctors would tell them what treatments and medications would cost before prescribing them. Wellness is a complicated topic, bridging myriad disciplines and sectors. This intro hasn't even talked about the many things that will have an impact in the future, though we'll get to some of these later in the issue. For instance, GLP-1s are still a hot topic. Gene editing, mental health, biopharma, menopause, the rise of AI in everything from personal wearables and monitors to China, which is creating AI-run hospitals and research labs. All of this is tricky when we have such partisan splits on what to prioritize versus treatment or prevention. Later in the issue, we'll talk about one of the macro forces at play in the future of wellness, the aging population. Aging is a global phenomenon playing out in different ways in different regions. In the US, many people are living longer, healthier lives, which is amazing. And projections for life expectancy gains continue to stretch. Yet, that also comes with challenges. We face a caregiver shortage, rising costs, generational support issues, and other challenges, especially when the rise as aging is coupled with a birth rate decline. As with all things, there are hopeful signs that technology can play a role in the future. Wellness impacts policy, pharma, food providers, insurers, caregivers, supplements, retailers, and other sectors in various ways. But some questions cross all of those. At what point does a wellness trend or fad rise to the level where the system and the industry should respond? How do you plan for plausible futures around public health and federally funded research? How much will AI disrupt everything from staffing to treatments to diagnosis to innovation? How do the companies in this space build and rebuild trust? How do we learn more about the specific health needs of traditionally underserved populations? Oh yeah, and how well do we deal with all of these things in an aging population? How healthy we are in the future depends on how we answer those questions. But in the meantime, please don't tape your mouth closed while you sleep, no matter what you see on social media. That's the intro. Now let's dive in. We'll start with the shifts driving change in the future, from my colleague, Mercedes Bender. In the now, we're shifting from routine care to holistic investment. Growing public interest in a holistic approach to wellness reflects a broader cultural shift toward more mindful and intentional living. People are inspired to place a higher priority on having a level of emotional well-being that is on par with that of their physical well-being and on their long-term viability. This focus has led to investments in cutting-edge options such as longevity treatments, food as medicine, and mental well-being. Next, we're moving from financial chapters to sequel adventures. Rising longevity will bring innovation opportunities for later life planning. Technologies will enhance healthcare efficiency, curbing prolonged costs with tailored treatments. Insurance and financial industries can offer new products for extended lifespans. This unlocks marketing potential in healthcare and pharma for employers to support an aging workforce. And in the future, we move from local treatments to international therapies. Increasing skepticism toward U.S. healthcare system propels interest in natural remedies and integrative care. Affordability issues will expand medical tourism in homeopathic sectors. People will increasingly pursue overseas treatments and alternative therapies for quality, holistic care, making a significant movement toward personalized and cost-effective solutions. And at this point, we'll start into the panel. We start with Dr. Sharif Ellenhall, the former Undersecretary for Health for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Then we'll talk to Monica Christmas, Associate Medical Director of the Menopause Society. Then Marion Nestle, author of What to Eat Now and Professor of Nutrition, Food Studies, and Public Health Emerita, New York University. And finally, Dr. Peter Abadir, Associate Professor of Geriatric Medicine, Johns Hopkins University. The nation's public health budgets are being retooled under the Trump administration, with research priorities shifting. This comes at a time when the system needs to be rebuilding trust, says Dr. Sharif Ellenhall, who formerly served as Undersecretary for Health at the Department of Veterans Affairs. When he thinks about the future, he's worried that he doesn't see a substitute for the National Institute of Health and its federal funding. But he sees paths forward for building trust and thinks AI has a role to play in healthcare. But I want to zero in on something I think is a really interesting point he made during our interview that applies pretty broadly. Earlier, I mentioned the Rachel Botsman quote about how transparency is essentially the antithesis of trust. If you trust something, you don't need it to be transparent. Ellenhall suggests that a different way to build trust is related to something futurists talk about a lot: uncertainty. Being transparent, not about what you know and how you know it, but what you don't know. He thinks that would have helped during what eventually turned into a trust crisis, the COVID pandemic. Here's what he told me.
We're in a very interesting time when it comes to trust in science, in addition to trust in public health. What the scientific community needs to learn much better is how to communicate about uncertainty and how to be more forward about what we do not. A lot of the pandemic guidance, for example, was based on the best, albeit very limited information that public health practitioners had about the virus and the vaccines when they first surfaced. And what I think we could have done better is to admit transparently that we don't have all the answers and be more precise about the likelihood that guidance might change and that we may see different outcomes with things like genetic mutations of the virus and the efficacy of the vaccines over time. I don't think anything was nefarious, but that lack of acknowledgement of uncertainty was a mistake. And it wasn't a mistake made by one person or one figure. I think the entire public health community could have done that better.
Despite that, Americans do trust public health information from U.S. agencies like the Centers for Disease Control, 60%, and the Food and Drug Administration, 55%, according to the Axios Ipsos American Health Index. Yet in our hyperpolarized society, these institutions are being pulled into the political fray, says Mallory Newell, a vice president within Ipsos's public affairs practice. That can be a problem when trying to confront what we view as our biggest public health threats, like obesity and mental health. While efforts to shrink government include cutting scientific staff at public health institutions, most Americans support public health research. Just 22% support firing FDA scientific staff, 62% oppose. Where people split is on what to prioritize. 41% feel that federal health policy should focus on improving lifestyles and preventing disease, while 38% feel it should focus on medication and treating disease. The two are not mutually exclusive, of course. But whether they operate in the public or private sphere, healthcare providers and institutions must understand the American public now demands research and prevention on treatment. It's a tension that may reflect their heightened concern about systemic challenge such as obesity and mental health. Menopause, when women stop having a full period for a full year because their ovaries stop making estrogen, has vaulted from a taboo to a hot topic. It's sparking widespread discussions and celebrity-endorsed products that could create a $600 billion market by 2030. Dr. Monica Christmas, Associate Medical Director for the Menopause Society, welcomes this shift as an opportunity to advance women's healthcare by addressing misinformation and developing personalized care. Menopause isn't a topic many Americans know much about, which is a problem in an aging population. It's also not a topic science knows enough about, which is also a problem in an aging population. We need more research and more education in this space, partially so we can sort out what proper treatments for symptoms. Here's what she told WTF's managing editor, Kate MacArthur.
It is very difficult to disentangle what is truly due to menopause versus what is due to chronological aging. And I think that's an important part of this because men experience things too. Now, this is a natural part of aging, and we don't have a way to halt or stop the aging process. There's not one menopause syndrome that every single person gets. There are some people that get very few to any symptoms, and sometimes that's only during that perimenopause, menopause transition. And then there are other people that have every possible symptom under the sun, and those symptoms could last for not just through the menopause transition, but they can experience them for many years after they have that final menstrual period too. So the importance in that is to not lump everybody together.
Most Americans agree that addressing menopause is essential to advancing women's health, but they're split on whether healthcare providers have risen to the occasion. Just over half of women and men think there are sufficient solutions to help with menopause symptoms, says Abigail Jones, a vice president with Ipsos's healthcare practice. As America ages and awareness of menopause and its effects grows, the opportunities for brands will grow too, to build stronger relationships with women in midlife, and to play a leadership role in an underserved market. But gender-informed research and product development requires reach, resources, and expertise. So Ipsos has launched a women's healthcare practice supporting healthcare providers and wellness brands as they work to identify, understand, and meet women's needs. By better understanding women's experiences, both with menopause and with healthcare more broadly, providers and brands can earn trust, build better products, and support healthier living for all. Marion Nestle is one of America's most influential authorities on nutrition and health. At 88, the New York University professor emerita continues to influence food policy discourse through her daily food blog, foodpolitics.com, and her upcoming 17th book, What to Eat Now. In it, she builds on her seminal 2006 work, What to Eat, and explores 2 decades of dramatic changes in the food industry. When she thinks of the future, Nestle has broad ideas to reshape the future of food and health. She says that to really make America healthy, we need to, quote, reverse people's expectations of what is normal. To do that, it's about regulations and industry and marketing working together. She thinks we need to teach kids to cook in school, that we should use regulation to bring down the price of fresh foods and more. But she also thinks that something consumers have noticed, shrinkflation, has an important side benefit. Here's what she told Kate.
People eat what's in front of them. And if you're given a small portion of food, you'll eat a small portion. If you're given an enormous portion of food, you'll eat a lot more, even if you don't finish it. There's so much research that shows that. I don't even think we need to discuss it. The big problem in American diets is that people are eating more. And people started eating more in the 1980s. The number of calories in the average person's diet increased by 300 to 500 calories a day during the period from 1980 to 2000. That accounts for the weight gain. So if you want to reduce your weight, you have to reduce your caloric intake. That's what the GLP-1 drugs do really effectively. They make people feel less hungry. They have less of an appetite. The food noise is quieted down. So the big question is, how do you help people eat more healthfully, which is also important, and also eat less than they're accustomed to eating? It's very difficult.
Food noise. I love that. There's the noise we hear in our head, that insistent little voice encouraging us to grab a quick snack. But there's also food noise all around us. From keto recipes and natural dyes to recommendations on fiber, protein, and calories, Americans are barraged with complicated and often contradictory advice about their diets from medical professionals, health influencers, and a range of sources in between, says Senior Vice President with Ipsos, Christy Click. This information overload presents a significant challenge for brands seeking to validate which messages Americans listen to and what foods they actually eat. Now, AI-powered tools can verify food and beverage choices, package sizes, social context, and more by analyzing pictures of meals uploaded by research respondents. These images capture what's really on Americans' plates in full detail, and Ipsos Vision AI allows researchers to get that perspective at scale without solely relying on what respondents can recall. That more precise data can help companies glean clearer insights to then create product and communication strategies that support healthier habits and strengthen customer loyalty. Have we mentioned we have an aging society enough times? Probably not, because it's that important. And one aspect of that is America is facing an elder care crisis as the number of Americans aged 65 and older will rise to 82 million by 2050, while growth among younger groups stagnates. Dr. Peter Abadir, an associate professor of geriatric medicine at Johns Hopkins University, is tackling this issue in multiple ways using artificial intelligence and other cutting-edge technology. His team at the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Collaboratory for Aging Research, AITC, aims to use technology to help adults live longer, healthier lives at home, even if family is far away. He and Kate talked a lot about technology, including several promising developments that could aid in taking care of our aging population. Everything from how your Wi-Fi could help detect falls, to AR glasses, to cloning caregiver voices so that people hear from their caregivers virtually instead of some other generated voice. He cautions that we'll need lots of different technologies working together, and that even that won't solve anything. And even that won't solve everything. Here's what he told Kate.
I'll talk first about the workforce. So I'm not talking here about technologies, but employees, geriatrics nurse aides, trained nurses that take care of older adults need flexibility, needs tools, needs resources, needs fundings, financial support. If you have even the most advanced technologies and no workforce to use it and help and support, then we didn't move. Second is that co-designing, inventing, they call it living labs. How can we bring those investors, people with philanthropy, to see the opportunity, the massive opportunity for innovation in aging tech, from financial tools to home safety to cognitive support? Investing in the development of the technology, investing in the scholars that will be developing the technologies, investing in databases that will be part of the future of deciding whether that technology is effective or not effective.
Recent scientific advances have made it possible to detect, diagnose, and treat devastating diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, earlier than ever before. But now people need to be convinced to get care. New Ipsos research indicates that patient refusal of care is a major barrier to better long-term health, says Hannah Brown, a director with Ipsos' healthcare practice. By prescribing therapies earlier, clinicians can make a life-changing difference for their patients. But first, patients must trust and understand that a diagnosis is not a sentence, but an opportunity. Yet real clinical environments are complex, and patient decision-making is complicated. The best practices shared by healthcare practitioners and the broader medical community can help. Now, it's possible to monitor and learn from these experiences through a multi-client Alzheimer's monitor that Ipsos has launched in the US. These collective insights cast light on opportunities to build trust and improve patient education. And if that knowledge is used to shift perspectives on diagnosis from fear to empowerment, it can make a difference. As Alzheimer's cases in the US are projected to double to 13 million by 2050. Early intervention could cut this trajectory, extending independence and quality of life for millions. Now it's time for the tensions. I talk a lot about how public opinion matters in foresight. It's not causal because I work for a polling firm that does foresight, rather the other way around. It's why I work here. Understanding people, markets, and society in the context of foresight is, frankly, a superpower. People drive policy, and policy drives the future. Sometimes there's a disconnect between what the public wants and what it gets, and this is one of those situations. If public opinion had its way here, we'd be driving full force toward a future where the US is a leader in healthcare research globally, and likely a leader in universal healthcare as well. That would not seem to be the direction we're headed, just gazing around. However, you never know. Policy could, down the road, catch up with what the public actually wants. Which brings us to the question for the future. Wellness touches almost every sector, but we picked a couple of the most salient, like public health. What health messages are people following most, and where are they getting them? And how can the public health messages be crafted to reach across this partisan divide? In women's health, what information should health providers and brands share to better inform men about women's health issues? In the technology space, how can healthcare providers integrate AI tools and maintain personal care, but also privacy? And in consumer health, how can providers better support behavior changes to help GLP-1 patients be more successful at maintaining weight loss? Join us again next month, where we're going to take a very different turn from the future of wellness into the future of kind of the opposite of that, the future of indulgence. That issue is going to be part talking about luxury and part talking about vice. And what even is a vice anymore? And what even is luxury, for that matter? We'll get into the definitions, we'll get into people's opinions, and we've got, of course, a great panel lined up to talk through all of those complicated issues. I'll point out two things quickly. One, if you go to future.ipsos.com, you can sign up for our free monthly newsletter so that when the indulgence issue drops, you will be the first to see it. And you can also download the full tables for free from our Future of Wellness study, or any of the previous What the Future studies for that matter. We've done 50 plus issues, and we're going to keep rolling into the future. And at this point, I would like to thank you for coming out, for joining us, for giving us some of your time. Because when you stop and think about the future and project yourself into the world your customers will be facing in 3 or 5 or 10 years, you can backtrack from that. And so when you think about the future, when you think about possible futures, you're going to ask better questions today. Thank you very much. I am WTF's editor,